Here are 5 boring AI automations that you could sell today for $1,500 a pop or more. These are not flashy chatbots. They're not AI agents. What they are unsexy but very simple, straight-line automations that can add value to virtually any business. I sold systems just like this when I scaled my automation agency to $72,000 per month. They're going to be in a blend of Make.com and N8N, and I'll show you exactly how to build them over the course of the next few minutes. And by the end of the video, you'll have added 5 more great systems to your arsenal. Let's get started. The first system is a search intent scraping system. What the system does is it finds lists of high quality companies that are hiring for a specific position. Then it scrapes those companies, gets CEOs, decision makers, and founders at those businesses, and then adds them to a cold email sequence using a bunch of automation. I'll run you through how all of this stuff works, but first for context, let's say you're a company that wants to hire somebody. Where do you go? Well, you basically have 2 major options, at least in the United States. The first is a website called Indeed, and the second is LinkedIn. So what companies do when they're hiring for a role, like an SDR, sales development representative, is they'll create a post on LinkedIn looking for people to fill. Floor Coating Warehouse just did this. Fulcrum just did this. Blanco Technology Group just did this. Right. Now, what we can do is we could take this page, aka this URL, and we could actually pump it into a scraper created on a service called Apify. If we do this, what we can do is we can actually go through the previous page automatically and scrape the company name, the company website, the description of the job, everything that they're looking for, their compensation, and we could add it to a big spreadsheet. Okay. Once we have it in a big spreadsheet, we can fire it off to one of many email verification services. The system uses one called AnyMailFinder. And then on the back end of the system, we can do some additional things like research the decision maker, give us some more context about them autonomously before finally adding them to a cold email service. This video is going to be using Instantly, but you can also swap with whatever you want. SmartLead is a big one. There are a few other ones as well. So in terms of how the system works under the hood, as you can see, the very first thing we do is we run an actor. Now I'm putting in a hard-coded URL here, but I'm sure you guys can imagine you guys could swap out this URL however you like. That URL is equivalent to the URL of the LinkedIn job, the post that we just showed you a minute ago. Okay. From there, we will get the dataset items of that post, aka this run just occurred. It deposited a bunch of data into this dataset on Apify, and what we're doing is we're just extracting it here. The end result is we have a giant list of companies. Okay. Air Garage. We have a company LinkedIn URLs, company logos, location, salary info, and so on and so forth, just repeated for all of the jobs that we've scraped. So in this case, I think we scraped 30 or 33 or something. From there, I have a bunch of filters set. These filters just check to see, does the website exist? Because we need the website to proceed. Is the website linkedin.com? Sometimes LinkedIn posts ad posts that go to careers.linkedin, so this just filters them out. Are the number of employees at the business less than 150? This might be useful if you're looking to work with small businesses like I am. Assuming that they are okay, what we do is we jump into a database. Now I'm using Google Sheets as my database. You guys can use whatever you want. What this Google Sheets database basically does is it just checks to see, have we added the same company name to the database before? If so, don't proceed. What we want to do is we only want to pitch companies once. We don't want to continuously pitch people over and over and over again every time the scraper runs. And this is a very simple design pattern that allows us to do that. So assuming that the job we're scraping doesn't already exist in this big database with the company name and the title and the tracking ID and so on and so forth, then what we do is we actually add them to the database right over here. Okay, so mapping all of the fields from that Apify search, and as you can see at the end of it, we get a ton of data. Finally, I'm using an OpenAI or an artificial intelligence module, GPT-4 Mini in this case, but you guys could swap this out with whatever model you guys want, to basically filter out jobs that don't contain or include things that I'm looking for. So I left this very vague here, but essentially you can use this filter to determine whether or not a job is relevant to us. Now think about the logic here. We're only filtering jobs that aren't already in our database. So we're significantly reducing the token count that we're feeding into the artificial intelligence, and we're ensuring that we're only filtering jobs that are new. Now, once we filter the job, what we finally do is we search for a decision maker using a service that I really like called AnyMailFinder. You guys could swap this out with any API call to any similar enrichment service. What we're doing is we're looking specifically for CEOs that operate at the domain, and then I'm also passing some additional information, row number, company name, and campaign status. Then I'm also adding what's called a webhook URL. This just allows us to set up a webhook somewhere else and then watch and wait to see all the results roll in. You don't need to do this, but I do it because I like making sure these systems are pretty airtight. Okay. Now, once we're done with that, what we do is we go over to this second scenario here that's waiting with a webhook. If I run this, we'll catch all the data currently in the queue. And this sends a node right off to Perplexity, which is an artificial intelligence service that allows us to browse the web, very similar to GPT web search, but it's sort of the first iteration of it. And assuming that we get some information on who the prospect is. So what I'm doing is I'm actually just feeding in a bunch of messages about who the person is and seeing if we could look them up. What we receive as a result is we get a bunch of data on who that person is, in this case, Melina, where she's based out of, how long she's been working, and so on and so forth. What we do is we actually feed this information into an AI module that generates a customized icebreaker that allows us to reach out to her. Instead of just saying, hey, Melina, how's it going? I'd really like to sell you something. What we do is we use AI to take that web search data and then build us an extraordinarily customized icebreaker. So the end result of this is, hey, Melina, admire how Propel champions diversity and digital talent because diversity is important to her. Also love your thought leadership on the future of tech because I think she published some podcast or something. From there, we add that to the database. We actually update the row that we had earlier with a bunch more information, aka full name, all of their data basically over here. And then underneath, what we do is we add an icebreaker and then a link. We do an HTTP request to Instantly, which in our case is just going to a test campaign. This test campaign is already set up and basically is just queued up to send the icebreaker as well as a couple of other points of information. So the end result is we now have an email sequence that is crafted, ready to go, and automatically already sending emails completely autonomously. All we need to do is just add a LinkedIn search URL to the beginning of the system. This is going to say something like, hey, Melina, admire how you do X, Y, and Z. I really love to get in touch with you because I saw that you were hiring for a certain position. I think that I have a solution that might be able to solve your problem for significantly less money and make it really, really easy for you to take care of this. Here's what the solution would look like. The second system is an AI podcast repurposing engine. Now, the way that this works, and I built this out on my channel just a couple weeks ago, so if you guys are already familiar with this, this is why. You enter the URL of a podcast. Once you enter the URL of a podcast, it will then transcribe the entire podcast, extract anything of relevance, and then use that to develop high quality social media posts that you guys could publish on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook. So let's give this a go. I'm going to go over here and go Nick Sarayev, Jack Roberts, YouTube podcast, because we had a podcast published on his channel just a little while ago. I'm going to copy this URL and then I'm going to paste this into my system, okay? What this is going to do is if we go back here, we're now getting the transcript via an Apify actor, Apify being the same scraping service that I was using before. And you'll notice that it comes up quite often because I'm a big fan of Apify. I think it makes my life a lot easier. As you can see, the one we're using is called YouTube Transcript Ninja. So it's actually now extracting the transcript for that video specifically. Because this is a little bit longer of a video, I think this one was 40 minutes, you might have to wait a minute or two. After this is done, you'll see we've now finished with the scrape. We now have a bunch of data over here, which if I make JSON, one of the items is a long transcript from start to finish where Jack and I talk about, AI and automation and so on and so forth. From there, I feed this transcript into artificial intelligence, OpenAI, with a prompt like, you take as input a long meandering transcript and you identify the 10 most interesting engaging points. Then you generate a bunch of JSON containing these points in the following structure. Okay. I give it some rules. I give it a quick little data dump, and then it goes and it actually generates me a list of 10 engaging points. Once it's completed, we have a list of these 10 points on the right-hand side. So there's a transcript of the paragraph of interest. There's some context, and then there's some feedback that I have the model actually give me on how we could make it better. There's a deep explanation of that section. Then there's a short image description because I want to generate some images on this later on. From there, we use a split out node. This just turns our data from one item into 10 items, which allows us to loop over them and iterate them. Then from here, what we do is we pass them through 3 separate nodes. The first is an Instagram post generator. The second is a LinkedIn post generator. And the third is a Facebook post generator. So I'll only open the Instagram one for brevity, but essentially we take as input a section of a transcript right over here. And we tell AI, hey, I want you to write it like an Instagram post. Then it goes out and does it. After that, we generate an Instagram image. Okay. Now the way we're doing this is with DALL-E. This is by no means the best AI image generator on the market. In fact, I think as of right now, it's probably kind of somewhere near the worst, but the end result is we get some cute looking image like this. In our case, I think we were talking about the labyrinth or something, and I've chosen to use watercolor bunnies as my style and my theme for maybe my blog or something. So that's what that looks like. And then we take all of that information, and then we add it to a Google Sheet called my little Instagram sheet right over here. And this is now just basically an entry into a database that a later workflow can use to automatically publish on my behalf. We'll do the same thing for both LinkedIn and for Facebook. And the way that I've separated this is I have multiple tabs here, one for LinkedIn, one for Facebook. And these posts are sort of custom curated to that specific platform. Sometimes LinkedIn posts are longer than Instagram posts, which tend to be short. That's sort of the idea. Now, after that, what we have is we have a schedule trigger node in the second half of this workflow. What this does is every day, let's check it, at 7 a.m., this goes through the previous sheet that I'm showing you over here, and it actually looks to see, hey, which row does not have a posted on value, probably this one here. So we haven't actually posted this yet. It then goes and it publishes this to the specific platform of interest. So if it's Instagram, it'll use the Instagram Graph API or the MetaGraph API to post on Instagram. If it's LinkedIn, it'll do an HTTP request and then publish directly to LinkedIn. Then if it's Facebook, it'll publish to Facebook. I don't want to have to go through and then delete them all from my Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook.